Good morning. Hope you're having a great day. So, there's an old anecdote about this guy. The rabbi sees him on Sunday and says, Yanko, where were you in Shul this Shabbat? He says, Rabbi, 75 degrees. It was sunny. I mean, when am I supposed to play golf? You know, that's the day to play golf. What's the rabbi going to tell him? The guy has a point, right? A little while later, a couple months later, the rabbi sees him again. He says, I haven't seen you in shul yesterday. He says, Rabbi, it was drizzling. So the rabbi says, that's a perfect time to come to shul. He says, no, you don't understand. When it drizzles, that's when the fish in the water come up to get fresh water, and therefore I had to go fishing. When am I going to go fishing if not when it's drizzling? So the rabbi says, all right, he got me again. The rabbi sees him a while later. It poured cats and dogs in Shabbat. And the next day the rabbi sees him and says, "Nu, what about yesterday? Why didn't you come to shul yesterday?" He says, Rabbi, and when do you want me to go shopping in the mall? It's an old anecdote, but it connects to this week's parsha. Because in this week's Torah portion, Jacob first blesses his grandsons Menashe and Ephraim. And after he blesses Menashe and Ephraim, he of course blesses the 12 tribes. But in his blessing that he blesses Menashe and Ephraim, he speaks to them in a beautiful blessing, which we say many people say every day to their children before they go to sleep. Hamalach hagoel osi, may the angel who protects me watch you, which I've spoken about yesterday. But in there he says, V'yidgu larov b'kerev haaretz, you should multiply like the fish. And the question is, why is he comparing and giving him a blessing to be like the fish? What's Jacob trying to tell Menashe and Ephraim? What's special about the fish? And there's two things. The first is what I told you. Interestingly enough, when it rains, the fish, they jump up to get the fresh water. But the question is, why would they go for fresh water if they're in the water? They're in the body of water the whole time. And the answer, of course, is because they don't just want water. They want something fresh, something new. And what the blessing that Jacob was giving his grandchildren, was that don't be stagnant. Don't be complacent with what you have, with where you are spiritually, in your relationship to God, in your relationship to Judaism, to Torah, to your family. But always, just like the fish, always strive and yearn for fresh water, for fresh ideas, for new connections, for new heights to grow to, which is a very powerful and important thing for us as Jews. But then there's another thing. You see, human beings are created by God. But we seem, at first glance, self-sufficient. We're not connected to our source. We're not connected to our parent, to our mother that had us, or to the source of life, of course, to God. But fish are always connected to the body of water where they're their source of life. They don't get separated from the source of their life, and they always know that without the water, they can't survive. Humans, we don't realize that our source of life sometimes is God, and we forget that without God, we can't survive. And that was the blessing of Jacob to his children. Be like the fish. Remember the source of your life, godliness. Be connected to God. Be connected to your source of your life. Because ultimately, when you're connected to your source of your life, then you live a life of meaning and vitality, because the source is constantly connected to you. You know, there's a story with the famous Hasidic master and mayor of Premishlan, who he lived in a city. They lived on top of a hill, and Hasidic tradition had that before you pray every morning, you immersed in a mikvah, so you would go down to the ocean. But when winter came, it was very icy and snowy, and you couldn't go down the hill. So everyone would go around, and it was a big detour. It would take them much longer to go, but you got to go to the mikvah. So they went. But they would see the mayor of Premishlan. He would walk straight down the hill, and he would never fall. Everyone else tried it, but fell. And one time, someone asked the mayor of Premishlan, the famous Hasidic master, how do you do it? And he said a very powerful point. He said, when you're connected above, you don't fall below. It was a metaphor. What he was saying is when you're connected to Almighty God and you don't have fear, and you're connected to the source of life, then you don't fall here below in the world. That's the blessing, that we should be like the fish and remember our source. But we should always look to grow and have vitality. One of my favorite stories talking about the fish, and I'll finish with this, is the story of Rabbi Akiva, when the Romans decreed that you couldn't learn Torah. And Rabbi Akiva studied Torah, and it was punishable by death. And one of his disciples once asked him, what are you doing, Rabbi Akiva? You're studying Torah? The Romans forbade it. And Rabbi Akiva says, listen, he says, gave them an analogy of a fox and a fish. There was a fish swimming in the ocean, and there was a fisherman trying to catch the fish. And the fish was going wildly from side to side to avoid the net of the fisherman. And this fox turns to the fish and says, fish, fish, what are you doing? Come out here on dry land. I have a little space for you. I'll protect you from the fisherman. And the fish looks at the fox and says, foolish fox, if I stay in the water, there's a chance that the fisherman catches me, and there's a chance that the fisherman doesn't catch me. But if I come on dry earth, I'm guaranteed to die because I'm not connected to my vitality, to my source of life. Says Rabbi Akiva, same thing is true here. Yes, the Romans forbade me from studying Torah. If I study Torah, there's a chance they catch me. I'll be put to death, but there's a chance they don't. But if I don't study Torah, and I'm not connected to my source of life, then I have no life. And that's the blessing that Jacob gave Menashe and Ephraim, to be like the fish, to recognize and be connected always to their source of life. Reb Meir per Mishlan was when he walked down that hill and he never fell, because the source of life guarantees spiritually that we're connected to the purpose of who we are. And always to remember to grow. Don't be stagnant. Don't be complacent. Because a Jew, a human and a Jew, always has to grow to greater heights. Have a great